Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing no-fault divorce in Thailand. For those who are unaware, in the common law system, there's this notion of fault divorce and no-fault divorce. What are we talking about with respect to fault divorce and no-fault divorce? Well, it's kind of exactly what the name would seem to imply. When you're dealing with a quote-unquote fault divorce, it's a divorce system wherein some level of kind of blame is ascribed to one or sometimes both of the parties associated with the underlying divorce, because the policy thinking behind this was back about 100 years ago. Marriage was an institution that needed to be preserved, so cause needed to be shown why a dissolution could happen. It was a very different way of thinking from a policy standpoint with respect to the issue of marriage. But long story short, and the thing to take away from this video is, no-fault divorce is pretty common in the Western countries now. And in many jurisdictions in the United States, this notion of no-fault divorce is pretty prevalent. Now, you still got to go through the motions. You've got to file with the court and show cause, not so much show cause, but basically make it clear that a dissolution is sought. There's some proceedings. Depending on the jurisdiction, sometimes it's very straightforward, if not darn near easy. In some jurisdictions, it's a little more there's a little bit more formality associated with it. But long story short, no-fault divorce is pretty straightforward. The question is, does Thailand have no-fault divorce? In a very real sense, one, you can't really do an apples-to-apples comparison between common law jurisdictions, including the US, and Thailand. Thailand does not utilize a common law system. It's a civil law country. On top of that, Thailand has its own kind of twist on everything. It's very unique. Thailand was never colonized. And for that reason, the legal system here in Thailand is unique to Thailand. It's Thailand specific, and there are just certain things in it that are unique to this place. Back to the point at hand, again, not an apples-to-apples comparison. Thailand uses a civil registrar system when both creating and dissolving marriages. Basically, if two parties go to the civil registrar office and sign a piece of paper, as long as their identities are proven up, they sign a piece of paper that says, hey, we want to be married, they're married. That's basically it. And if the same thing happens and they both consensually show up at the same office and sign a document that says they're divorced, they're divorced. That's just it. That's over and done with. Now, where does that leave us with respect to the notion of fault, no fault divorce? Well, if one spouse and oneself agrees to the divorce, it's even easier than no fault divorce for example, in American context, because there's no need to go through any kind of court proceedings or anything. You just go to this government office, usually takes a morning or an afternoon, sign a piece of paper, boom, you're divorced. That being said, if it's a situation where there isn't consensus, there isn't a level of agreement between the spouses, now you're over into court. And I hesitate again to make an apples-to-apples comparison, but the Thai court system with respect to divorce in a situation where there's not mutual consent, yeah, you are looking at a situation that's much more like the fault divorce system as opposed to the no-fault divorce system. So in a sense, I make these two sort of sister videos, one on fault divorce in Thailand, one on no-fault divorce in Thailand, because in a very real sense, it's kind of both. Depending on how you go through the process, you can end up with a no-fault divorce in Thailand in the sense that it's pretty easy, it's pretty painless. In fact, it's easier than a no-fault divorce in many ways in Western jurisdictions. At the same time, if there's a lot of rancor in the overall marriage, in the overall relationship, or there's a lot of dispute with respect to finances and family finances, the marital estate, you could end up in a situation where you're in protracted litigation, which again, I hesitate to make this analogy like right on the nose because I don't think it really is, but it's not too far off from a notion of fault divorce in the common law context, especially coming from the United States.